Good morning. My name is Yvonne Schulte, and I am an alcoholic. Can you hear me in the back? Huh? All right. Um, it is a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the committee, and particularly Adam, for inviting me to come out here this weekend. I've had a wonderful time. I'd also like to really thank those of you who were very kind to me on the volleyball court yesterday. I really appreciate being indulged because I love to play ball. Um, Anyway, if you're new, I would like to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. Let me just tell you right up front, my sobriety date is February 10th, 1994. I was 21 years old when I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was invited to go to a one-year residential treatment facility by Child Protective Services. And my intention when I went to that one-year rehab was to get the heat off, get custody of my daughter back. I was not going to ever be in a meeting with you lame people. I was far too cool for Alcoholics Anonymous. And really, you guys didn't have anything I wanted as far as I could see. And I knew that because my mommy used to drop me off at meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. She dropped me off at my first one when I was 13 years old because she did not like my relationship with alcohol. I don't know what I thought of it. I can tell you my first meeting. My first meeting was in downtown Fairfax, Virginia, and it was a sharing meeting. And I remember they sat in a circle and kind of shared, and you were able to smoke in the meeting back then, which was the only thing that was cool about the meeting at all. And except also there was a 17-year-old boy there, and I thought he was kind of cute. So I don't remember anything about the meeting. I don't remember anything anyone said. But after the meeting, I thought that if this boy, because I was 13, I thought if this boy had come to Alcoholics Anonymous, he must be pretty bad. And so I asked him if he had killed anyone. And he told me he had, and I thought he was really cool. And that was my first exposure to Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't remember hearing anything about the book Alcoholics Anonymous or sponsorship or the steps, and maybe people tried to talk to me about those things. I don't want what you have, so you old people don't talk to me, And I never wanted to come to Alcoholics Anonymous. In retrospect, though, and I'll tell you, every rehab, I've been to a lot of rehabs, but I'll tell you that it was this last time in February 10th, 1994, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I got a sponsor in a home group. I have stayed sober ever since participating in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I've been to a lot of rehabs along the way, and I never wanted to be here, like I said. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned, and it's something that I learned in retrospect, and it is something that has been really useful to me out there in the world, is that it doesn't matter how I feel, and it doesn't matter what I think. What has mattered to me in Alcoholics Anonymous are the actions I take. And thankfully, when I got out of rehab, I fell into a very active home group, and this woman, this evil, horrible woman, appointed herself as my sponsor because I wasn't asking anyone. And she used to tell me things, and then I would say, well, I can't do that because, and she would say, I did not ask your opinion. And I don't know why I didn't put hands on her. But for some reason, she intimidated me, and I started to follow direction. And so I learned in retrospect, it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter how I feel. What matters are the actions I take. My actions, my sponsor, my home group, trained my feet sober, and here I am 20 years later with a life I cannot believe. But I'm going to tell you in a general way, to the best of my ability, what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. I'm adopted. I don't really care about that. I never felt abandoned. I felt special and chosen. But I'm the only alcoholic in my family, and oh God, those poor people. If they had known. I was raised by great parents. Ken said he had the best parents. I had the best parents. Hands down, my mother is amazing. She passed away of cancer when I was 5 years sober. My mom was a devout Roman Catholic. She was practiced her religion. The most important thing for her was to feel a connection to God. And didn't feel like it was her right to judge others. She was the most humble person I've ever met in her life. I hope someday to have a fraction of what she had naturally, and or what she worked for. It looked natural to me. I'm sure she worked at it. My mom was just amazing that way, and I was raised in this great family. I have a brother who's so normal. I mean, it's almost boring. he, he Now, my brother is actually their natural child. They were able to have one natural child. My brother is one of those baffling people. Like, he graduated high school, in June, whenever you graduate from high school, and then in August he went to college and stayed for 4 years. And in 4 years he got a degree. He met his wife in college. They're still married. I remember their wedding day. It was Christmas Eve. 1992. Christmas Eve, 1992, they've been married. I remember their wedding day, Christmas Eve, 1992, because I was about almost 9 months pregnant, and I had to keep going in the bathroom because I kept getting sick. I needed to take care of business because I was sick and 9 months pregnant. That's what I look like on their wedding day. And they're still married. They have 3 children, and they work hard, and they've got stuff. I don't know how they do it. Thank God for my sister. My sister is not an alcoholic, but her priest advises her a lot, that she ought to attend the program of Al-Anon. My sister loves alcoholics, just loves them. I'm her favorite. Well, I was until she started breeding them. I got a call one day when my nephew, who's like 26 now, bless his heart. God, he's beautiful too. 6'7", blonde hair, blue eyes. But when he was a senior in high school, I got a call from my sister saying that sorry she hadn't called me in a couple of weeks, but there was so much going on at home because 2 weeks ago the SWAT team busted her house. And it was like one of those 21 Jump Street SWAT teams. Like, there were all these young girls and guys who were playing pool at their house. Like, she thought they were in high school, She thought they were high school students, and they were undercover narc agents. And my nephew was in a whole lot of trouble. I try to muffle my laughter, though, with her, because I just, he's getting ready. He's getting ready. And she once sent her junkie stepdaughter to me for 6 months, who went screaming and crying back home after 6 months of my love. Anyway, I'm grateful to my sister. My sister, I believe our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, describes my sister. It says that there's a certain type of hard drinker. What differentiates a drinker like what my sister was when she was young, an alcoholic of my variety, is that those types of drinkers are able to stop or moderate their drinking when the heat is on, right? My sister was a party girl by the time she was 12. My sister's 8 years older than me. When she was 12, I was 4. She was 5'10.5" by the time she was 12. We lived in Los Angeles. She hung out at Venice Beach. She had long blonde hair and green eyes. She surfed. She was beautiful, and she hung out with much older people, and she liked to party. She drank a lot, and I'm so grateful for that, because my sister thought it was funny to get me drunk when I was 4 years old. And she's mortified by that now. She thinks she caused my alcoholism. I tell her she probably saved my life, but she got me drunk for the first time when I was 4 years old. I did not get drunk with my sister a lot, because my mother was an at-home mom and she was active and present in my life. But the few times that I got to get drunk with my sister, I remembered the feeling of that. I absolutely love the effect produced by alcohol. I love being intoxicated. My sister and I talked about this today. It's fun for me because I don't understand it. When my sister when she asks me why I drink, and I say I drink because I like the effect produced by alcohol, she wants to know what I'm talking about. Because my sister is one of those where I was a bartender when I was 19, and I remember my sister brought my mom into my bar, and I served them those really fruity drinks that you can't taste the alcohol in, because I wanted to get my mom drunk. And my sister and my mom did the same thing. drinks, and when I offered them a third, they said, "No, thank you, I'm starting to feel it." Yeah. Like, why else would you drink? I mean, I've never woken up and said, should I have coffee or vodka? It's not a beverage. I drink alcohol because I want to get loaded. I have never drank for the taste of I like the taste of alcohol, but I've never thought, oh, what wine pairs with salmon? I don't care. I want to feel it. I love that feeling, and I remember that feeling when I was really little, and I became, from the time I was little, obsessed with alcohol. I mean, obsessed. And my sister, no, my dad, when he got home from work every day, he would crack one bottle of Coors Light. He would sit in a lawn chair outside and just kind of have that one, sweating beer after a hard day's work, and he just enjoyed that one beer. That's all he wanted, one beer. I don't get it. And I used to go out there and sit down next to him, and I would ask him if I could have a sip of his beer. I loved the taste of beer, and he would hold the bottle and let me have a little sip, but pull it back, right? I could just have one little sip. And my mom she drank red wine. She would have one glass of red wine while watching Cagney and Lacey or whatever her favorite show was at the end of the night. She sat there in her rocking chair watching television, one glass of red wine. And I would come and ask her for a sip because I love the taste of red wine. And she would hold it and let me have a little sip, and that was it. And about the time I was 11 years old, we went to church every week, but around the time I was 11 years old, I lost my connection to God and started to doubt whether God existed at all. I couldn't feel God. I thought, and in fact, with all the contempt that an 11-year-old could muster, I really started to believe that the idea of God was for the dull-witted, Intelligent people cannot believe that there is some, I don't know, creature out there, I don't know what it is, who grants wishes or whatever God does. I just thought, that's for people like my parents, not for smart people like me. And I lost that connection, and my connection to God was so important for my mother that she started to take me to different churches. Although she was a devout Roman Catholic, she started to take me to other churches, hoping that I would find a connection to God somewhere else. And one of the first churches that she took me to was a Byzantine Catholic church. I didn't even understand the distinction at 11. But at the Byzantine Catholic Church, when you walk down the aisle to get the communion every Sunday, you got the bread and a little spoonful of red wine. And I loved, when I was 11, getting that one spoonful of red wine every week. So I asked my mom, this is the church I want to go to. So at 11 years old, I'm making my religious decisions based on the ability to have one spoonful of wine. And you can see why by the time I was 13 years old, my mom did not like my relationship with alcohol. I got drunk without my sister for the first time when I was 11. And what happened that weekend is I was spending the weekend at my girlfriend Heather's house. Heather's parents were out of the country, and she had older sisters who were in high school, and they were babysitting us that weekend. And we were doing whatever 11-year-old girls do at slumber parties. But I remember one night, I think it was Saturday night, I walked into the kitchen, and her high school sisters were sitting around the kitchen table, and they were drinking from a bottle that said Seagram 7. And my parents didn't have hard liquor, but I knew what that was. And I wanted to get drunk. And my sister used to tell me that I could drink big guys under the table. And I know today that when I was 4, 5, and 6, I wasn't drinking anyone under the table. But I believed her then, and I was so excited about it. And I saw those girls drinking from that Seagram 7, and I walked up to them, and I put my hands on my hips, and I said, I could drink you all under the table. And they laughed at me. But they gave me a liter of 7 and 7. I remember because I had never seen a 1-liter bottle of soda before, and I remember untwisting that and starting to drink it in the kitchen. I remember it's sweet. Seagram 7 and 7. Oh, that is sweet. I loved it, and I was drinking it in the kitchen, and then I've got nothing for you. I don't remember anything that happened that night. I know I've been a blackout drinker since I was 11. What I can tell you is what happened the next morning. Because we lived in Virginia at this time. Heather had a 3-level house. The basement was an unfinished basement with a cold concrete floor. I came to on that cold early the next morning. I was in my training bra. That was all I had. I didn't even have a blanket. I have no idea what happened. There were no boys in the house. Nothing happened to me. I did that all by myself. I had no idea what had happened the night before. The last thing I could remember was the kitchen. And I remember just the shame of having to walk through the house naked. It must have been really early because I don't remember running into anybody, and I think I would remember that. What I do remember is finding my clothes on the top level of the house in a heap in the hallway, and when I picked them up, I realized why I had taken them off. I wet myself. So that's the way I drank when I was 11. I got to tell you, it never got any better than that. The thing is, though, is that not every time I drank ended up like that. So I had the illusion of control a lot. The problem for me, and I had a hard time when I got here, as you'll hear later, I had a hard time identifying with the disease of alcoholism. And it took a really clear inventory, a walk through our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and a lot of conferencing with my sponsor before I could look back and see my relationship to alcohol. And what was true for me when I was 11 was true for me when I was 21 years old. And that is that every time I pick up a drink, I cannot control how much I drink or when I'm going to stop. Sometimes I think I can. There were times I would think, I'm going to go to the bar tonight. I'm going to have 2 drinks and that's it. And I would go, I would have 2 drinks and go home. But if I had 2 drinks and went home the next night, I would think, what's all the fuss about? See, I can have 2 drinks. It's no problem. And one of those days, I wake up in incomprehensible demoralization. I have no idea when I take a drink really what's going to happen. And I started to feel that feeling that I hear a lot about in Alcoholics Anonymous, the feeling of separation from my fellows. I thought that there was something very different about me. And when I came to AA and I heard you guys talk about that, I thought, yeah, I know you guys feel that way, but you're not different. Like, I am different. There's something wrong with me. And from the time I was about 11 years old, I know today this is self-obsession, but I didn't understand that what I had was self-centeredness or self-obsession because I thought so poorly of myself. It's self-obsession and self-centeredness because I think about myself a lot. And I did. I worried about what others thought of me. How do they learn how to dress? What clothes fit together? What do you say to people? I was obsessed with this idea that I didn't fit in with people. With Facebook today, I'm friends with a lot of people I was friends with on Facebook from elementary school and middle school and high school. None of them thought I was different. None of them did. But I was obsessed, and I had this sense of impending doom at all times that they were going to realize I didn't fit in with them. And I don't know that alcohol fixed that, but alcohol certainly made it so I didn't care. I love the effect produced by alcohol. Bill writes about it. I think it's in the 12 and 12. Either the first or the 5th step in the 12 and 12, he puts 2 words together. And I remember reading those words when I was new and thinking, yes, that's it. He calls it anxious apartness. I don't think that there are 2 words that better describe how I felt growing up. I felt anxious, I felt apart from, and alcohol made that okay. And by the time I was in high school, I got involved in our drama department, and I thought now I know why I feel different, because my family moved us from Los Angeles to Fairfax, Virginia. I'm an artist. There are no artists in Fairfax, Virginia. If I move to New York City, I will find my people, and then I will fit in. And I became obsessed with moving to New York City. And I graduated from high school at 17 years old and moved to New York City to go to the New York University to study acting. And I know today, I knew my family was very proud of that. And I also know that my mom was terrified to send her 17-year-old off to New York City, as she should have been. But I got up there with this idea that everything was going to be different in New York. And wow, it was. I thought I was worldly. I was quite naive, as a matter of fact. And I got to New York City. See, in the D.C. area, I could drink, but you had to plan it. I get the college guys across the street to buy a 5th of Jack Daniels, or go down to Southeast D.C. to go, to the liquor stores that sell to minors. But in New York City, I could walk in anywhere and get served in 1990. That's when I went off to college. It didn't matter, and I loved it. And who can go to college? The bars don't close till 4, and then there's after-hours clubs. I cannot to school. I just felt like I'm free now. I'm free. I'm free of my parents. And so I was actually at New York University on academic scholarship, and my college career lasted one semester. And that December, I remember talking to my mother and explaining to her that artists don't have to go to college. God, my poor mom. No worries. In a very short period of time, I did end up on stage. It was around 42nd and 8th, though. Not exactly what I or my mother had in mind. But by the time I was 19 years old, I was making a lot of money at a little sports bar called Scores, and it was I felt very powerful. I thought my parents were dumb. I was making more money than my parents had ever made, and I was very excited about life. But by the time I was 19 years old, Bill writes in his book, Alcoholics Anonymous, not in his book, in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, he talks about how women, often are gone beyond recall in a few short years, and that's certainly my story. And with the stuff that I introduced to my drinking, the other thing Bill talks about, and for him in the bottom, once he starts getting admitted to hospitals, it's alcohol and heavy sedatives, and I'm self-administering heavy sedatives by the time I'm 19 years old, when I start to not be able to get through a day, I start to get a little nervous, and I think, if I could just move back to my parents' house and just chill out for a little while, I need to start over, and I remember going back to my parents' house, and I got a job bartending in D.C. because alcohol is not the problem, and and I thought, I don't know why I thought I would never, never do anything but drink again. I just have to keep it cool this time, and I started driving into Southeast D.C. at 19 years old and figure out, how things work out there, and thankfully, on more occasions than not, I was getting ripped off because within a couple of months of living back in D.C., I discovered that I was 2 months pregnant, and I was not sober when I was 2 months pregnant. When I found out I was pregnant, I knew immediately that I was having a little girl. And I couldn't wait to have this baby. And the reason I couldn't wait to have this baby was because I thought, I had that hole. Kent said something, and I believe that this is his experience. All we share here is our experience, but he talked about alcohol making him whole. I don't feel like alcohol didn't make me feel whole. It made me not care I wasn't, I had this idea that there was something out there that was going to fix me, and I just had to figure it out. And at one point, it was New York people. I was going to find them. When I found out I was pregnant, I was 100% certain that this baby was going to fill that gap, And not just looking back, in the moment, I was so immature as to think that a child would fix my emotional needs, and I could not wait to have this baby. And the day I found out I was pregnant, I quit drinking, I quit smoking cigarettes, and I quit heading down to Southeast D.C. And I went to a doctor 4 days later, and I said, I have been in a lot of trouble over the last couple of months, and let her know what I was up to. And I said, what is going to happen to this baby? And she said that that we still had a heartbeat, so probably everything would be fine. And she said, do you need help? And I said, no, I quit 4 days ago. I had every intention of staying sober. And like Kent said last night, if you'd given me a lie detector test, I think I could have fasted that day. There's no way. I mean, who would drink pregnant? Who would do that? I'm not going to do that. I want to have a healthy baby. I want to be a good mom. I want to be a cool mom, but I want to be a good mom. And I had every intention of staying sober, and I stayed physically sober for a period of, 5 to 7 months. I wasn't keeping track. It wasn't very important to me. But I can tell you that I had moved into a place in D.C. where there were a lot of people hanging around on street corners. And I remember getting out of the cab one night, and I'd had one of those weeks where everything went wrong. He had left. I didn't know where he went. The new him had totaled my first brand new car ever, and it was not insured yet. My job, I was bartending, and they didn't want a pregnant girl behind the bar, so they demoted me to hostess, which I thought was really, really unfair. And it was just one of those, everything is wrong in my life, and I take a cab to my house. The room I was renting in a row house, I get out of that cab, and I see those guys on the street corner, and I think, and go say hello. But there was that voice that said, that's not what you're doing. You know what you're doing. And I remember feeling like I don't care. And it's not really that I didn't care. It's just that I know what makes the hurt go away. I know how to fix that pain, and I know how to do it in an instant. And that night I started to drink and use other substances with a desperation I had never experienced before, because I could not stand being physically sober, knowing what I was doing to this little girl. And somewhere around, I know I was still up to that on Christmas Eve. I know my due date was January 8th. Somewhere between Christmas Eve and January 8th, my doctor caught on to what it was I was doing. And my doctor explained to me that I had 3 choices. I could try to quit on my own, and my daughter could die in the process. I could keep doing what I was doing, and when she was born, she'd be tested, and she would be removed from my custody. Or I could go on methadone, and I chose that option. And when my daughter was born, she detoxed in the neonatal intensive care unit for 16 days. And I never intended that to happen, and I was very sorry about it. But I also felt like I was a victim. If you had asked me why she ended up there, why I ended up there, I had a whole list of reasons, and none of them were my fault. And I got to tell you that I never wanted to take responsibility, but I never understood that I could never be a free person unless I take responsibility for the actions I take. If my drinking, if how I feel, if what actions I take are contingent on what he does, my parents do, what my job does, I will never, ever be a free person. I get to accept responsibility for my actions. I get to live free today. And that is such an amazing gift. And that daughter was released to me at 16 days old, unfortunately for her, because 3 days later we were living in a place in D.C. that had no windows. This was February in Washington, D.C. It had no windows, no doors, no running water, and no electricity. And the way that I lived with my daughter for the first 9 months of her life was like this. We would live in a place like that. I would take care of business. And I would be there for a few days or a few weeks or a few months. My daughter would get sick enough, I'd walk down to a payphone, I'd call my mommy. She would come pick me up, she would drop me off at detox, take care of her grandchild, invite me to live back in her home, and I would stay there for a few days or a few weeks or a few months. And then I'd have that bright idea. I'm going to go downtown just for a minute. It will be different this time. I know what I did wrong last time. I will come right back. And I would pack up the baby and head downtown, and I'd be there for a few days or a few weeks or a few months. And by the time my daughter was 9 months old, I was working for an escort service in D.C. And I got called in one day by the owner. Kaylee, she said her name was. Kaylee called me in, and one of my clients had reported some strange markings that I had, and she ran one of those escort services that serve the political scene, and they didn't want girls like me in their service, so I was let go that day. However, she did explain to me that she was a sober member of a 12-step program. I don't remember which one. I mean, she told me. I don't recall because I didn't care. She told me that day if I wanted to get sober, she'd be happy to help me and I could continue to work for her. And I was appalled that she thought I needed her help. So I walked out of that escort service office that day, and I went back to this place I was staying with this woman, Tawana, who I was paying $20 a day to watch my 9-month-old baby. And I told Tawana I was a little nervous because I needed to make some money really fast. And Tawana said, that is not a problem. My brother Buttons is a pimp. We'll walk down to a payphone and page Buttons, and you can go to work for him. And we walked down to a payphone and page Buttons. And, I didn't get sober this night, but this night certainly was my seconds and inches. God, but for the grace of God. We walked down to a payphone and page Buttons, and he picked me up and took me on the streets of D.C. and explained to me how business works out on the streets of D.C. because I had no idea. And that night, that first car I got into, I'll never forget. It was I did not take that guy's money because we could not agree upon my value. To be fair, I was 20 years old by this time, and I felt like I looked a lot different than the other girls on the street, and I wanted more money for that reason. He did not agree, and it ended up being a good thing for me because there was an undercover police car waiting, and it put on its lights, and it asked me to step out of the vehicle. I stepped out of the vehicle saying, "It's not what you think." Right. But they frisked me, and I didn't have a single dollar on me, so they could not arrest me for prostitution that night. But they told me, "We know what you're up to out here, and if we see you on the street again, we will arrest you on sight." And Buttons told me I was too hot. He told me to go back to Tawana's place, his sister's place, and he would send someone to take care of me so I wouldn't be sick that night. And I could come back to work for him in the morning. And I went back to Tawana's place, and nobody care of me, and I was sick. I was so sick all night. I could not take care of this child. My daughter was so ill. I had no ability to take care of her. And at 7:15 in the morning, I needed $20. I walked down to a payphone, and my mom hadn't seen us in a while, and I knew she knew what we were doing, and I knew she was worried about her grandchild. And I was too ashamed to speak to her, but I called her, and when I heard her voice, she was about to leave for work. When I heard her voice on the other end of the line, what I said was, if you bring me $20, I'll let you have the baby. And my mom was more than happy to come bring me $20 for her grandchild. And my daughter went off to live with a foster family at that time, as she should have. I have met a lot of women in Alcoholics Anonymous who have done far less than me and have not gotten custody of their children back. And I am so grateful. It was a gift. You know, when I was new, I used to whine all the time about my sad, sad life. And I remember this woman in my home group sitting next to me one day, and she said, you know, I hope I'm not sitting next to you when you get what you deserve. I was mad that night, but I got to tell you, she was absolutely right. Absolutely right. I have been given so many gifts here, and unwarranted gifts. I spent the last, what I hope is the last 4 months of my drinking, you know, between, it was like somewhere in October of 1993 until my sobriety date of February 10th, 1994. During that period of time, I didn't get to see that little girl of mine. I missed her first Christmas, her first birthday, her first words, and her first steps. And I spent that last 4 months. I had gone to detox one more time in September, and I went off to this facility that really, really, really tried to help me. But I met a boy there, and I had my 21st birthday in detox, and he was 21, and he was there for exactly the same reason I was, and his baby's mama was in jail, so I thought it was the perfect time to embark on a relationship with him. And so I ran off in the middle of the night to Baltimore with this guy, which was fine until his baby's mama got out of jail the next day. And then he said, you can't stay here. And I'm like, well, I don't even know where I am. Where do I go? And thankfully, his grandmother took pity on me and found some welfare mom who rented me an extra room she had in her row house. And I know how to make money. I know how to make money. And in Baltimore, they have a place that's called The Block. It's a block of strip clubs, and on the block in Baltimore, they have back rooms for the customers to take the girls, and that's the way my life looked like in late 1993, early 1994. Where I got sober, it's customary to read a portion of Chapter 3, and I remember I wasn't paying any attention because meetings are boring and stupid, but I remember hearing that expression, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I didn't hear the context. Bill is talking about the inability to stop drinking. But just the words, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, I remember the hair on my arm standing up, because at 21 years old, I knew pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. And my mom tracked me down at a club I was at, and she had made an agreement with Child Protective Services. They had found this facility that took mothers and babies. It was long-term. It was 1 year residential, 6 months aftercare. And they told me if I was willing to go there, I could have custody of this little girl back. And they also explained to me that that was the only way I was going to get custody, is if I had 24-hour supervision. And that if I chose not to go, they would do everything in their power to make sure I never saw this little girl again. And I did not want to be sober. I had no interest in sobriety. You know, where I got sober, in the treatment facility I went to, and a lot of the ones in the local area, I heard this phrase that people said a lot, which was that if you don't get sober for yourself, you can't stay sober. You know, and I'm sure at some point it has to switch, but I have to tell you, I did not get sober for myself. I didn't even want to be sober. I got sober just to get custody of this little girl back. And I had every intention, I'll follow your little rules for now, but there's absolutely no way I'm staying sober at the end of this, you know. And I went through detox. I don't count that in my sobriety because, you know, I took drugs and brought my own. But I got out of detox February 10th, 1994, as physically sober as I am today, and that's my sobriety date. That's also the day I got custody of that little girl back, and she had not seen me in 3.5 months. She had just had her first birthday. At that age, that's a long time. My mom brought her to me. She was screaming. She was holding on to my mother, screaming for her mommy. And she was not talking about me. She had no idea who I was. She didn't want me to touch her. And that's what my life looked like on my first day of sobriety. You'd think I'd be grateful for some of the things that I've been offered, but no. No. I'm going to do your little rehab, but that's it, you know. And in fact, I remember one time at 90 days, I didn't get my way about something in treatment. And I was like, I don't have to stay here. court ordered, and I walked upstairs and I packed my stuff, and by the time I got downstairs, my child protective services worker was standing in the kitchen. She said, "You're free to leave, but your baby is not." And I remember just so angry. And I went back upstairs and unpacked my stuff and stayed in that treatment facility. And my facility that I went through, they got us, it was really hard for them to coordinate childcare for these babies. So we got to about 2 meetings a month. 2 AA meetings a month. I felt like that was a little excessive. I didn't really feel like I needed a meeting that often, thank you very much. I'll let you know when I do. And I remember telling my counselor, like, you know, you're wasting your time. You can make me go to meetings while I'm in here, but I'll never go again when I get out. And she said, well, while you're in here, you have to go. You know, that woman, my counselor, hears from me every year on my AA birthday, and I thank her for what she provided for me in my first year of sobriety. You know, I was just going to do rehab, and that's it, check out. And when I was about 11 months sober, I was at a meeting at a local Lano club, and they had flyers out of local area events, and there was frankly, there was this, I had no idea what this was. I had never heard of PA before. I was the only young person in my treatment facility, but there was this flyer, and it said Cirky PA on it, and they were putting on this spaghetti dinner as a fundraiser for a bid committee. It was a bid committee event. And they were having this speaker, and his name was Sandy Beach. Now, I got sober in the D.C. area, and Sandy Beach used to live in the D.C. area. And if you're new, if you haven't heard of Sandy Beach, they may have some tapes back there, some CDs nowadays back there. He's one of my favorite speakers. But when I saw that flyer, I remembered that Sandy used to do this 12-step workshop in the D.C. area, and one of the detoxes that I went through a couple times used to take us in the druggie buggy to hear Sandy. And if I had to go to any meeting, I liked that one because it was at NIH in Bethesda, Maryland, in this really nice theater, and they had really cushy seats, so I could sit in the back and take a nap, you know, and very comfortable. But I remembered I was listening to him, and the reason I remember it is because something he said made me laugh out loud. Like, I heard laughter come out of my mouth, and I immediately thought, like, oh no, what are you doing? Like, lame. Like, don't laugh in AA. I mean, it's embarrassing, you know. So when I saw this flyer and this man Sandy was going to speak, I thought, that's the man that made me laugh that time. And I asked my treatment facility, can I go hear this man speak? And they said yes, and I went to hear this man speak. I don't remember anything he said, but I was introduced to all these young people who were involved, who were enthusiastic, who seemed to enjoy being sober. I mean, seriously. And there were a lot of cute boys there, all right? And I was 22, and that was important. And I asked them where they went to meetings, and somebody told me where they went to meetings. And I remember I got out of treatment. Oh, that night, actually, there may be a couple of people in this room that relate to this. That spaghetti dinner, they actually had a sobriety countdown. And I was like 11 months and 3 weeks sober. It was my first sobriety countdown. And I was so mad I couldn't stand up for 1 year. It just seemed unfair. But I got out of treatment, and I'll tell you, I've never gotten out of treatment and gone to a meeting. I mean, who would want to? I'm free, you know? And that time, I got out of treatment, and I went to a meeting, and I asked them where they went to the meeting the next night, and I started to go. I started to go the next night, and I started to go the next night, and I started to go the next night. But I did not get a sponsor. What I thought was important for sponsorship was I really felt like somebody ought to be able to get me, you know? And so what I was looking for in a sponsor was like a young lady who she had to have done alcohol, and you know, she had to be pregnant with a little girl, get put on methadone while pregnant. That little girl had a detox in a neonatal intensive care unit. She had to have lost custody, got custody back. She had to have been a stripper, and she had to have been a prostitute. And I was looking, but I couldn't find anyone. And if you're new, I want you to know that none of my sponsors have had any of that in common with me, and it has not been necessary for them to be effective sponsors for me. They don't need to get me. They need to help me go where I want to go, you know. And the problem with me is that I have no idea where I want to go because I only know what I want right now. So what I have needed in sponsorship is somebody who is neutral to my feelings, who's neutral to the looking for, and who is not afraid to hurt my feelings, and who is not intimidated by me, who can just tell me the truth. And this woman, young lady, I mean, I was 22, she was 23. She watched me for about a month, and she kept asking me, do you have a sponsor yet? No, no, no. And then she said, I'm going to sponsor you, and we're going to try it for 30 days. And I was like, ah! I did not have enough self-esteem to say no. I did not want her to sponsor me. And I got to tell you, I'm not advocating a lack of self-esteem, but in that particular day, it certainly helped me because I couldn't find the words to say no to this woman. And she was so unkind. She did not care. And I needed that. For some reason, when I was new, that was what I was able to hear. If somebody had coddled me, I don't think I'd be here today. And I know we all have different experiences. I don't think the same, it's why we don't have one sponsor in the world. But for me, I needed that, and I heard from her all the time. I didn't ask your opinion. The other thing she liked to say, because I would say, well, I feel, and she'd say, I don't care how you feel. I thought she was the meanest person in the world. And I got to tell you, though, it took some time for me to look back and realize what she means by that. I don't care how you feel. Because at 21 years old, when I put down the drink, up and until that time, I lived my entire life based on my feelings. I take every action or refuse to take an action based on how I feel. What were my results like? What was I doing for a living? Where was my child, when I got here? I had zero results from operating based on my feelings. I had to learn to live another way. I'll tell you what, I don't really think about how I feel. It never occurs to me, like, do I feel like going to a meeting tonight? I have regular meetings on regular meeting nights, and I just show up. And that has also made it possible for me to learn how to be successful out there in the world. I am so grateful for these stupid lessons that I learned when I was new, the not caring how I feel, show up, suit up and show up. I just thought those things were so stupid, and they have helped me be successful out there in the world. So this woman appointed herself as my sponsor. When I got out of treatment, I got to move into the projects. In the DC area, and I did not look at that as a blessing then. I have to tell you, I feel really fortunate looking back, and there are a lot of women I work with who I wish were afforded the same opportunity that I had. But what happened for me is I'm living in the projects with this little girl. We're on welfare, food stamps, WIC checks, subsidized childcare, and I'm thinking two things. I'm sitting in my meeting thinking, number one, no one else here is on welfare, no one else here lives in the projects, no one else here is a single mother. They weren't getting knocked up when they were 19, but, all I'm doing is comparing myself. And the other thing I thought of, and I think of this as newcomer superlative thinking, nothing will ever change. Like, how could it ever be different? I will always live in the projects. I'll never make any money. Every time I make $1 more an hour at a job, they decrease my welfare benefits, so I can't ever get ahead. Like, nobody ever helps me out. Like, I'm getting a place to live. Nobody ever helps me out, I never thought it was going to be different. And I had the bright idea at a year sober when I got out of treatment that I know how to make money. Wait a minute, Kaylee fired me because I was loaded. I'm not loaded anymore. Should I talk to my sponsor before I go back to work for an escort service? No, no, I know what she's going to say. But she doesn't understand. She got sober senior year in high school. What would she know about raising a kid living in the projects? My sponsor said I lived my life like ready, fire, aim. So at a year sober, I went back to work for an escort service for about 6 months. And the best description I can have for that is that it ate my soul. I had done that physically sober before, but I had never done it sober. And I started to experience the most intense self-loathing I had ever experienced in my life. I could not stand being physically sober doing that for a living. And the other thing, too, I think in retrospect, is that whenever I have a secret, it separates me from you. I have to build a case about why you would be wrong if I told you the truth, why I can't tell you anyways, why you're too dumb to understand. It always, in order for me to keep a secret, I have to separate myself from you. And for an alcoholic of my type, it is dangerous for me to separate myself from you. I try very hard not to keep any secrets today. And when there's something, it doesn't happen very often anymore, but it does. When there's something I'm afraid to tell my sponsor, I have a best friend, and I tell her first. And then I have to tell my sponsor. So I finally, at about 18 months of sobriety, I sat down with my sponsor and I let her know what I was doing. And I, to sobriety, I was out of answers. I had absolutely no idea how to change my life. I had no idea how to be happy in this world. And it was the first time I completely surrendered. I became willing to follow direction. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. And my sponsor told me a few things. One of them was I cried a lot. I was one of those, like, you would come over to say hello to me, to be kind to me, and I would suck the life out of you with my self-pity. People kind of avoided me after a little while. I mean, they were nice to me, but but they, you don't want to ask me how I am. Debbie Downer. My sponsor told me that I did not need to let people know how I was anymore. So I'm not going to be honest with people. No, you're not going to be honest with people. Just what you're going to do is you're going to put a smile on your face. You're going to say, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? And then she gave me some questions to ask people, like to pretend I was interested in them. Like, oh, what did you do today? How's work? Like, I didn't even know what you ask people. I only know how to unload my terrible life to you. And so she told me to walk around meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous with a smile on my face and pretend like I'm happy. And I was so desperate, I followed the direction, but I felt like an idiot doing it. And I remember having this smile on my face and just thinking, God, everyone can see right through that. Like, hi, hi, I'm Yvonne. No, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? I felt like such an idiot following that direction. And I got to tell you, I don't know where it happened, but at some point, I looked back and realized I was a happy person. I had acted my way by following sponsored direction into becoming a happy person. I was no longer sad. I no longer felt heavy. Most of the time, I feel really light and joyful about life. And I was just following direction. And, I want to tell you that when that escort service thing didn't work out, I just thought maybe if I went to community college for 2 years, maybe I can get a 2-year degree, and perhaps someday I could move out of the projects. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'll do that. And I went to community college, junior college, whatever, community college for 2 years. And I found out when I went to school and actually studied. I mean, I had never gone to school sober before. When I study, I show up for class, I take notes, I ask questions when I don't understand. I'm a straight A student. I had absolutely no idea. I had a 4.0. And at the end of the 2 years, I had a counselor pull me aside and say, you could go to college. And I was like, me? Like, I didn't think women like me go to college. And I said, you mean like the state school? And he said, I think you could go about anywhere. And I had this little dream. When I was 19 years old and pregnant, I would go down to this methadone clinic that was on the GW campus, George Washington University down in D.C. And I remember walking through, like, particularly on Saturday and Sunday mornings through Frat Row. And, no kids would be up then, but the excesses of their parties the night before would be outside on the street as I walked through. And I just remember feeling like I'm the same age as these kids. Why is my life so different? Like, how do they just be 19? Like, how does that happen? And I just wanted to go to college like a regular kid goes to college. And my counselor helped me apply to George Washington University, and I got an academic scholarship to GW. And 2 years later, I graduated first in my field from that university. And my mom got to come and sit on the White House lawn with my 5-year-old daughter in her lap and watch me graduate with honors from that institution. And I'm so grateful for that. I had refused to go to my high school graduation because my people were in New York. They're not in Fairfax, Virginia. And I remember my mom cried to me and begged me to go to graduation. She wanted to see me walk, and I refused. And she went and watched everyone else walk. And I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous for giving me the opportunity to make that right, because she got to see me walk at GW. And I'm so grateful for that too, because shortly after that she was diagnosed with cancer, and she died in a few months. And my mom lived long enough though to see me start law school. I applied to law school, and I remember I sat down when I took my LSATs. When I sat for my LSAT, I looked around the room and I was like, I know there's not another hooker in here. I don't share that with those people, but and I got to graduate from law school, and I'm a practicing litigator today. Who would have thought? I get to walk out of courtrooms today. It's an amazing life. I want to tell you really quickly about what happened with me and God. I told you I lost my connection with God, I laugh, because it never happened with God. It was just me. I lost my connection with God, and I came here to Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew a lot of you believed in God, and I believed you believed in God. I just didn't know how you could transmit that. Like, I knew God was a feeling here, and I didn't know how you could give me that, and I didn't believe it would ever happen for me. And my sponsor would tell me, you know, I learned in every other area, just take the action, forget about the results. But for some reason, when I got down on my knees, I was just seized with rebellion about it. I just felt like an idiot on my knees praying to air. Somebody's going to yell chump at me or something in the privacy of my own home. But I couldn't do it. And when I was about 2.5 years sober, I got an eye injury that ended up being really bad. It was really bad. I went blind in my left eye. I'm still blind in my left eye. But over a few month period of time, I developed an ulcer in my eye, and I had necrotizing bacteria in my eye, and I got sent from a regular eye doctor to the eye doctor at George Washington University, and after a while they hospitalized me for 4 days to try to treat this eye infection that I had, and to no avail. They transferred me to the Johns Hopkins University because it has one of the best eye clinics in the world, and I'm going to my mom, because I can't drive anymore because the eye is too sensitive to light. My mommy is driving me every single day from Fairfax, Virginia to Baltimore, Maryland to go see doctors. I saw them 7 days a week. On Sundays, I would see the on-call surgeons making the rounds. We would wait in this lobby, this darkened lobby with no secretary, and just wait for the doctor. He knew I was there, and he would come in at some point. And at one point, I had to put eye drops in my eye every half an hour, 24 hours a day. And I was in so much physical pain. The best I could describe it is it felt like there was a hot poker in my eye. And I was in so much physical pain, I did not have to set an alarm clock for every 30 minutes because I could not sleep that long. I was just dying. And I remember after over a month of this, and my eyes just gone blind slowly over that period of time. And thank God I started working my first newcomer who stuck, because there were days that I didn't go out because I couldn't imagine picking up a newcomer chip in front of her, One day, it was a Saturday, I made the decision the next day I was going to go downtown because I didn't think I could take another 24 hours of the physical pain I was in, and I know quickly how to make pain go away. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be sober. I did want to be sober, and it wasn't because I felt sorry for myself, although I did feel really sorry for myself. I just didn't think I could physically bear the pain any longer, and I wanted something to take the edge off. And that particular evening, I went to it was evening time by the time I saw the eye doctor, and he told me, Yvonne, there's nothing more we can do to help you. 50-50, you're going to lose that eye altogether in the next week. And I was so disappointed. And my mom dropped me off at my meeting that night, and this horrible woman came up to me and told me that what I needed to do that night was to go home and pray for the removal of the obsession I had with my eye. I have never wanted to kill somebody more. Yeah, it's an obsession. The doctors at Johns Hopkins have no answer, but it's an obsession. I misunderstood her. Yes, I had a medical malady, but I also had an obsession with that medical malady. I didn't understand that. And that night, I remember laying in bed, seething with resentment, just wondering if there was a way I could kill her and get away with it. Does a cigarette and Coke really work? I just remember thinking that. And that voice in the back of my head that starts saying, just take the action. Like, oh, that's stupid. I'm not going to pray for the removal of the obsession. It's stupid. But that head, I know by the time I'm 2.5 years sober, I know how to shut that voice off. And let's just take the stupid action. It doesn't matter if it works. Just take the action. And I got down on my knees, and I don't know what I said, but I know the spirit of it was, God, please remove the obsession I have with my eye, whatever. And I crawled back into bed, and I fell asleep for about 6 hours, and I had not had 6 hours sleep in over a month. And when I woke up 6 hours later, most of the pain was gone. I had just a little bit of very tolerable pain, and I couldn't believe it. When I woke up that morning, I was seized with the sense of the presence of God. And I received what I believe is the greatest gift that I've ever gotten in my life. My mom picked me up and took me to the eye doctor that day, and the on-call surgeon making the rounds was the same doctor who had seen me the night before. And he told me he had no medical explanation for the healing that had occurred in my eye overnight. So I received that morning the greatest gift. But I got to tell you that I learned probably the most important lesson that I've learned here in Alcoholics Anonymous to this day. And that is that I thought that what was happening to me was bad. Here I am 2.5 years sober. I'm following sponsor direction. I go to 7 meetings a week. I'm all over service. I am active in Alcoholics Anonymous. I am sponsoring people. I'm doing everything. Like, I'm entitled to something other than sobriety. right? I think I should get more. I don't know, houses, money, something, um, and definitely not eye injuries. This shouldn't happen to me because I'm working so hard. I thought that what was happening to me was bad, and from that, I received my greatest gift. I don't think I could have gotten it another way. I received my greatest gift, and it taught me that I am no longer a judge of what is good or bad in my life. So when something to me feels intolerable, I remind myself that there have been many occasions in my sobriety that something felt intolerable. And inevitably, when I can look back at a space of a year, 5 years, 10 years, I never think, oh, it shouldn't have gone that way. It's always okay. It always works out just fine. I'm so grateful for that. And I want to tell you about this little girl of mine. I got to raise her here in Alcoholics Anonymous. She was the kid at all the conferences. She went to 7 meetings a week with me, and every night she was at a meeting with me. I was in welfare in the project. If a babysitter was $1 a night, it was like $10,000 a night. I had no money, and people were so kind to me, and at the same time, when I started bringing my daughter to meetings, somebody pulled out the 12 Traditions Illustrated pamphlet to me. They brought my attention to the first tradition, and in there's a description of a drunk who comes to a meeting who is disrupting the meeting. He must leave the meeting because he cannot disrupt the meeting. A newcomer might not be able to hear what they are supposed to hear. He is welcome to come back another time, but he can't stay while he's disruptive. And I was told the same thing applied to my child. In fact, I had a lot of meeting habits that my sponsor had to teach me out of. I would get bored. I would walk up, get up and go get a cup of coffee and have a conversation with somebody back at the coffee pot. My sponsor told me that if I have respect for Alcoholics Anonymous and that if I am grateful for my sobriety, I can show that through my conduct in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so from the time I was young, thank you. And so just for an hour and a half a day, I don't pick up my phone ever. I don't ever look at my phone during a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't have a conversation with my girlfriend, and I don't get up and walk around. And I am so grateful for that lesson. And I was taught the same thing applied to that little girl. So you would find me a lot of meetings in the back of the room, laying on my stomach with a coloring book and crayons, because it was the only way I could keep a 2 or 3-year-old occupied for the meeting. And she grew up here, and she, I knew by the time she was 8, I would tell her, I'm saving you a seat. And she would say, you're not allowed to tell me that. And I'd say, I don't care. And my daughter, my daughter paid me back in spades. But my daughter started smoking crystal meth with the other Alateens by the time she was 11 years old. And by the time she was 14 years old, she was a runaway. And I knew, I know I can't get my daughter sober. I've never even asked her to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. She was raised here. I know she knows what it is. But as an adult, as her parent, I have an obligation to try to protect the circumstances she puts herself in. And I almost sent my daughter away to one of those places, and I would have. But her last year of drinking, she gave up the crystal meth, and I'm so grateful for that, because my daughter today, as a result of just drinking her last year, has a clear knowledge of what her condition is, that she suffers from the disease of alcoholism. And I remember telling her one day, I saw her drunk too many days in a row, and I said, you know what, I know you're 14, I know you're going to drink, but if I see you drink every day, you and I have a problem. And she said, got it. and not another word other than that. And she came to me when she was 15 years old, and she said, I have to tell you something. And I said, what? She was really scared, and I was nervous. I thought, pregnant, right? And she said, I've been going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm 30 days sober. And I was like, yes! Yeah! And she was 15. My daughter's sobriety date is June 21st, 2008. She just celebrated 6 years of sobriety, and she's 21 years old. And she is on fire in Alcoholics Anonymous. If I had known there were so many young people, I would have brought her. She likes to come sometimes. My daughter says that the 2 women she respects most in the world are me and her sponsor. And I got to tell you, you don't get to where we are today from where I was. And mostly that speaks of her program and her ability to forgive me for what I did to her. But we have a great relationship. She says I'm her best friend today. And I want to tell you, I was eavesdropping one day when she was talking to a newcomer, and this newcomer asked her what it was like for her when she was new in AA. And I heard her say, when I was new in AA, my experience is a little different different from most people. Because when most people get here, they have no idea whether Alcoholics Anonymous will work for them or not. But when I got here, I always knew AA would work for me because I've seen it work my whole life. That is not through me, that is through you guys, and I really want to thank you for that.